Good day, everyone. This is John here from 3D Create Tutorials, and this will be part 2 of this series of how to create this robotic hand. So thank you for joining me, and let's get going. Okay, so I'm going to take these next sections right here and select the points. However, I can't see through those, so let's make it see-through. And we're going to select these points here all the way around and deselect the other ones that we do not need with the Control key. We might have to do a little bit lower. There we go. And now that we got those selected, we could actually do the actual S key on the Y so we can get those exactly straight. And there we go. So let's continue to do this all the way through. And we can do this one as well. And then let's go ahead and Control key. And there we go. And we can also, scale this in on the Y. I'm going to rotate this after the fact because it's more of an angle, right? So we can do R. Just kind of rotate it similar to the way it was. And we can also move this out just a little bit. So let's say we want to keep these kind of a little bit farther extended. This one could rotate a little bit out. Kind of like that. Okay, so we've done the fingers, and I think that's going to make a big difference now that we've done that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and leave the thumb alone for this part. And now I can go in and export this all out. All right, so now that we've adjusted the actual finger areas and the thumb, we're going to go back to QuadraFlow and start modifying this again and try and see how this will look now with this changes. All right, so in object mode, let's go back and see how this works. So we're going to go back to this section here, data. We're going to go back to Remesh. We're going to do QuadraFlow. And we're going to make sure that we have everything selected like we did before, faces, preserve, and all that stuff. And we're going to keep around 800. So let's remesh this now and see what we got. And you see that it's kind of kept the form. I think this might be okay. Let's take this off so we can see what we're doing here. See how this kind of kept the section separate from that? And there is a few things that are a little bit kind of weird here. Like this polygon's kind of a little bit off. It's not really that clean. And yeah, there's definitely some issues on a few things. However, we could see if this works. So let's go to edit mode. I'm going to go back and show you kind of the other option, just so you can see. And I'm going to use that model actually because I just feel that it does a much better job. And this is just one way to kind of get around, at least get your object into the program to work with. And again, if you don't want to spend the money, I understand. Everybody has a preference on what they want to spend their money on, of course, and what's helpful to them. So I'm going to select all these and delete these. So hit the delete key, delete faces. There we go. And also get these. Just did a better job on the edge here for some reason, because I think the extra polygons. So delete faces again. See, this is kind of weirded out right here. It's not going to work very well. So a couple things we can do is we could take things like this away. So it actually, this is one that we don't need. So delete face. There we go. And this one too, don't need that one. Delete face. It has for some reason created this little thing here. Don't know why. Like this right here. So let's just take this one. Oh, it's this one right here. There we go. Okay, so we can go in. Like I said, you got to kind of do a little bit of modification here just to make it work. Actually, I'm going to go selection mode on the little section here. Just do these ones that I need. See, these are way off. I can just deselect this one. G key, we can just move this upward. And then we can do all these. This one. G key, move it upward. So G, move it up. See how these are way off? So I'm just going to go ahead and select each one of these and just do G. G, just to kind of keep the flow of this. G, G. And like I said, it's just much easier with the other thing because you don't have to do all this work. And then we got to kind of check this out and see how it looks compared to the rest of the object, right? Okay, so there we go. And there's another one here. Just a little bit of annoyance. All right, we got this too. You see how it kind of made this difficult here? It made extra sections here as well, so delete. And then we can do the points again. Let's go ahead and we're going to select these, and we're going to just go with the G key, or actually scale on the Z. And this way we can kind of get this all flattened a little bit, at least those points. And then we can start moving these things upward. So G, G, oops, wrong one, G, continue, there we go, and get that a little bit over there, and this one could be over here. So again, the hand or the thumb is going to go around in circles, right? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so again, I don't like doing too much modification, but this is something that's needed. So again, we got this kind of worked out, and we have to go in here and kind of adjust some things too. I mean, there's definitely a lot of work in here. You know, once you create this stuff with this type of process, and I just totally recommend the other way around because it just saves you a lot of time. Time is everything when you're building stuff. You don't want to spend a lot of time wasting. And modification can always be a little bit more difficult, and you might have to go back and do things or redo things. For instance, this one here is connected to some poly that's away from everything. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So it's not really going to work very well for us. So we almost have to go in here and get rid of this. Again, delete, face, and that's really what it comes down to is you got to go in and just fix stuff. So we take these two here, select them, and we can go mesh, merge at last one. There we go. And okay, now we've got this kind of modified and adjusted. We're going to go in back to object mode, right click, shade smooth. I'll make sure it's selected first. Shade smooth. And now we did that. We can now go into the modifiers tab here, add modifier, and we're going to go generate and then to the subdivision surface. There we go. So yeah, that came out nice. It took a little bit of work. We got about 3,000 something polygons when we sub-D it, and if we don't do the sub-D, then it goes down. So we can take this off again. It's 759. Okay, cool. So there's your object, right? So this is one option, and keep it in mind that, like I said, you have to rebuild everything from scratch and with that process. So just for awareness, we're going to export this out just the way it is, because I'm going to do the other one exactly the same thing. So I'm going to do wavefront object. This is exporting only the selection only. I'm going to keep it at 1. I'm going to actually put this on the Z and on the Y. This way it'll go in exactly as we need it and come back the way we want it. So keep that in mind when you're exporting the hand. So put this wherever you think. This is for me, will be tutorial, hand tutorial. And save it out. All right. There we go. So that's done. I'm now going to go to undo. And again, I didn't want to save because I don't want to have to redo this all from scratch again. Okay. So I'm back to my object. And again, it's a good thing if you're going to do multiple ways to do this. I would also copy this form so you don't have to recut everything. Just some things to think about while you're working, stuff like this. All right, so With this here, I'm going to now go into quad remesher. So let's try this now. So quad remesher, I'm going to keep it at 100%. I'm going to put the count to about, let's just do 100 and see how that comes out. Again, it's a lot of tests as we go. Tab key, that. I'm not doing anything on symmetry because everything is not exactly symmetrical. The other thing to keep in mind is that we still have we're going to have a problem. Well, this is okay actually. This is okay. This is okay. So we're fine there. So let's just go ahead now, because I added these in and I actually redid the forms. This is at the point where it should be anyway. All right, so we're going to take the adaptive size to 100%, keep the adapt quad count as is. Now, it won't go to this just so you know, we'll not do 100, quads. It'll do more than that. It always says something, but it's never accurate, so keep that in mind. I want to keep everything the way it is, detect hard edges by angle, and yeah, that's really it. So let's go ahead and now go back to object mode, and we can simply remesh it. And it just takes a few seconds to do this process. Okay, so we're back here and the process has been done. As you see here, it actually looks really cool. We can go to this mode to see, and it did a really good job of keeping the edges, and it's just really simple, the forms are perfect, and it's only 540, faces. And yeah, it looks really nice. And again, test it out by going, again, generate to subdivision surface. And we can see how this looks. Let's go back to take this off and go to this mode. And yeah, that's really clean and sharp. And it's definitely less polygons and it has better control. So two different ways to do this, right? So let's go ahead now and export this one as well. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to File, Export, OBJ. I'm doing this so you have both options. You can always fast forward and go to the other one if you have the right option. Again, we're going to do the same setup here, but this time we're going to call it, I'm going to say quad mesh or QM, so I know what that is. And this one will be overwrite. There we go. And now we've done that. Okay, cool. So we can now hide this. So we can hit the H key just to hide. And now we can unhide the fingers. Like I said, I'm not going to do every finger, and I'm not going to plan to do the tutorial around this, but I just want to show you just a few examples of how to work with your fingers and hands, just so you have some good awareness. Okay, so let's say we want to work on one of these. We could take one of these and copy and paste it, or we could do each one separately. It depends on what you want, of course. I'm going to focus on just one finger for now. Let me take this one as well. And now I got these kind of selected. I'm going to go selection mode, select linked. Again, that's Control L. And we can go ahead and go select, invert if we want, and just make sure that we go mesh, separate out selection, right? And now object mode, we can just hide these with the H key again. And this one we can work. Again, I've got it so it rotates around the object itself when I have it selected, and just easier. All right, so let's go ahead now and work this. So got a lot of, now you might want to keep a fingernail or not. It depends on what you want to do, of course. I'm going to get rid of the fingernail because it's just going to be in the way, especially when you're doing like, plasticity, trying to use CAD, and, forms like this are complicated and it's just hard to clean this up. You have to cut this whole thing out. And I have an example of that when I have my class, but I'm going to show this real simply, just to make sure it's simpler for everybody. So let's go ahead now and just go back to the lines here. As you see, there's a lot of form. One thing now, if you zoom in, it disappears. You can go in here to view, and we could actually make this a little bit farther where it doesn't clip. So let's go ahead and add a couple zeros there, hit enter. Now, we can actually go here as well, focal length. Actually, end result would be 0, 0. I always make these bigger because they always make it harder to kind of, so if I zoom in now, it can get real close, right? That's what we want, especially when you're dealing detail like this. Okay, so again, you take this and sub D this, it's going to be massive. We don't want to have a massive thing. We can also do something like this, go back to edit mode, and we can start just kind of zooming in on the areas that we need. So we can hit the period key, and there we go. And we can zoom in a little bit more. So what do we do with this? We got so many extra polys or lines here. So let's go ahead and start just cleaning them up. Use the Alt key, start selecting things. We can go here, Shift Alt. We can go here and just delete these lines by dissolving them. I can go in here and take sections of this away because again, just got way too much stuff here. We can get rid of that one. We can get rid of this one, delete, dissolve edges. And we can go in here now and just get rid of this one as well. So select this, delete, dissolve edge. And you see that these are not going to work. So we can get rid of, we can just take this one here, delete, dissolve edge. Let's delete this one. And see how it's becoming now a little bit more manageable? We can select this here and this here. Alt Shift, delete edge. This made this not as nice, but let's go ahead now and I think I could just get rid of these. So let's just do this. See how that's going to look? Kind of got to understand what you're doing, right? So if I cut this out, what is that going to do? And again, delete, dissolve edge. And now we have some 3-point polygons, which I don't like. However, it's going to fix it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And it's going to fix all this. But the main thing is having a nice form. So a couple of things I didn't have to do with the other object, but I just want to show this to you as well. So let's say you have your form and it's becoming very, difficult to work with. It's not very smooth. And it's just, not as nice as you'd like it. We can actually take a few more lines out. So take this one. And we could take away this one. Delete this as well. Delete edges. Okay. So again, it's becoming a lot more blocky. We could also do something like this. Every other one, just to kind of get rid of some of this stuff. I would do something like that. Delete edges. And you do have a lot more here. You probably just delete this one. And again, we're getting this down to quite a few less polys. And if you select all, you'll see that we have about 500 something. Okay. So let's just say you're good with this shape kind of. And again, we're going to use the same process as we did before. And I'm not going to use the other process. You're going to have to kind of work around that yourself. But I'm going to use quad remesher here because again, to me, it's just the way to go. Saves time. And it's basically the same process that I showed you earlier. So quad remesher, object mode, and this time again, remesh, and see what we get. And you'll see that this is very smooth. It kept the form. It's a little bit higher than I would like, but it is, it actually has the form. So some things to keep in mind. Now, if it's not as nice as you'd like it, you can simply go over here to sculpt mode and you can select this right here. And this way you can actually, bring the size up a little bit more. And you kind of go in and just kind of soften it, like this edge here is a little harsh. You can make that a little bit softer. And just real simply click, and that way you can kind of get, all this kind of like smoothed out a little bit. And it'll be that much cleaner when you bring it in. Okay, so there's that. So now I got the finger, I got the hand, and let's just go ahead and export this out. So again, go back to object mode. It's now, keep in mind, another way again to look at this is generate subdivision surface and see what this will look like. You could go back to this mode and see it's very clean. And again, there's a little bit of distortion here, so you probably want to do it and soften this a little bit. So we can go in here just real quickly, sculpt, and kind of just hit this up a few times till that line or that edge gets smoother. And that way you know that when you actually do bring it into poly spline, it'll be nice and clean and easy to work with. The bottom two, kind of get rid of these sharp lines. There we go. Yeah, just real simple, right? And I have it at 0.7. You can bring it down if you need to, the strength. Just whatever you feel is easier. So let's go back to object mode. Yeah, there we go. So let's export it with the same settings as we did before. Export OBJ. And this will be finger tutorial. There we go. QM. And the same settings as we had before. So export, there we go. All right, so that's it for setting everything up. Now let's go into the actual other program here, and we're going to start using plasticity.